Hi, I'm Emily. I am a writing and publishing emphasis, set to graduate next month. So what I'm going to talk about today is kind of where I found my niche within journalism, as well as some of the key journalistic principles I think are necessary in any kind of writing career that you do. But before I talk about that, I wanted to mention one of the things that hadn't really occurred to me until I started taking classes here. That was the biblical meta-narrative. Even as a writer, it just didn't, I had never thought about how significant it was that God chose to communicate with us, not only through written word, but through storytelling. The Bible itself is just one big story of love and redemption, and even within it has just tons of stories. And that tells me that as human beings, we're very impacted by stories. And that's the way that we learn best. So along with that is the power of Scripture itself. It tells me that the written word is enduring and it's influential. And that's pretty encouraging to me as somebody getting a degree in writing, especially in a world where the written word is kind of increasingly becoming devalued. I think the Bible is like a good source to look at, and it is not, it's not something that does not have power. Along with that, I've always been interested in human nature, and I think that's something that the Bible basically is describing and seeking to understand. And I think the way that we do that is through story. I have always been super interested in what makes people do what they do, like what they have experienced in life to shape who they are today. And I think understanding our nature is something really necessary when we're trying to understand not only the people around us, but the world around us. So pretty early on, I discovered that I preferred writing stories where I could be a little more creative than hard news journalism. However, I still really hold fast to these kind of journalistic principles that drew me to journalism in the first place. The first one is the watchdog role that journalists play. I think it's something that's really noble that they are sometimes sacrificing themselves to protect the public. Kind of the idea that they are shining a light in the darkness and exposing things that are maybe meant to be hidden for the better interest of the public. And along with that, I think that's something that we are called to do as Christians. And secondly is the relentless pursuit of truth. I thought there was going to be a little more people in here, but I was going to say I'm sure we've all read The Elements of Journalism in Foundations class. And their first element is that journalism's first obligation is to the truth. I really like that because I think today truth is kind of more muddled than ever. And so I really appreciate a profession that is seeking to untangle that and just to get to the bottom of what truth is. And especially at my age, I need to know truth, just not only to establish a moral foundation, but to make really any kind of informed decision. So I think it's great that journalists, that's literally part of their job, is to find truth. And another one of their elements is that journalism's first loyalty is to citizens. What I like about that is that it's not just the mainstream public, but that They seek justice for all. They advocate for marginalized. They act as a voice for the voiceless. And sometimes that can be done simply by spotlighting somebody who has a story to tell, and it's just this single story, but it has the potential to impact a much larger group of people if they were given the chance. So now I will get into what my passion is in particular, and that is human interest stories. As I mentioned, I kind of figured out early on that I really am not, like, finding hard news does not come naturally to me, but what I really love is sitting one-on-one with somebody and doing an interview, because I just get to hear their story and learn from the experiences that they've had, and then communicate it for other people who could also benefit. And I think one of the reasons why I like that so much is because I'm an empathetic person. And I think that was built in me from all the reading that I've done. I just really love to read. And when you're reading a book, you're kind of in that person's brain. So you're not only experiencing their circumstances, but you're experiencing how it feels to go through those circumstances. And I don't think empathy is something that comes naturally, and so I think that's where stories come in. They kind of build these connections and bridges that might not exist otherwise. And I think also that empathy is something that's uniquely human. I think we're the only creature that is able to imagine ourselves in somebody else's shoes and almost experience what it feels like to be there. And I think that's important for connecting with others. It eliminates feelings of isolation when people understand that they're not the only ones who go through a certain situation and that they can overcome. Even if you can't relate to or identify with somebody's story, at least it opens you up to understanding where they're coming from. And you really can't have reconciliation without understanding. So I just think telling stories leads to an empathy that's really necessary for any kind of reconciliation. And lastly, stories communicate redemption. And I think we can all agree that redemption is something beautiful that, Christian or not, people gravitate towards biblical themes. They like to see beauty made from ashes, and they like to see people being able to overcome and be redeemed. Over the past few years, I've had the chance to travel internationally, and I really have valued those experiences. Here are some pictures of just people I've gotten to hang out with, and I really love hearing people's stories in their own cultural context. I think there's just like a wealth of knowledge there. In these cases, most of the people I was hanging out with were either Christians or children. So we just got to, I like to talk to Christians across the world who are living out their faith in their context. I just think that's really necessary for all Christians to learn from each other in that way. And another thing that I learned in Longinus class actually was that God kind of always intended culture. It was always the plan, and He loves diversity, and that diversity is going to exist eternally. And so we need to pay attention to that and learn from it. One of the reasons I think that I just like value travel experiences so much is because in each culture that I visit, I'm experiencing a different aspect of God in that culture because we are image bearers. And so, again, I think it's so important to take in a cultural aspect of our faith and to hear the stories of those who are living abroad. time here, I have done 2 internships, and the first one was with Far East Broadcasting Company. It's an international nonprofit, pretty local here, and I got to combine my love for human interest stories with the cross-cultural focus by kind of crafting stories based on the testimonies of people who had accepted Christ in environments where either Christians were persecuted or at least not welcome, and sometimes just even isolated. And so that was something that I thought, oh, I could really do this, in the future. I love writing about people, and I love writing about cultures, and in the process I was learning about it and communicating it for other people to learn as well. The internship I'm doing right now is with the Borgen Project. It's another international nonprofit. Here's an example of an article that I would write. It's obviously longer, but it's talking about maternal, neonatal, and child mortality in Ethiopia. So basically what I get to do is research what's going on in a particular country, how it's affecting the culture, sometimes being able to focus on a single person's story within that research and craft articles that hopefully bring attention to what's going on so that different organizations can read what's happening, and maybe their special skill set could have an impact. And so it's really about connecting and making partnerships in order to address severe poverty. Sorry, that's what they focus on. So going forward, I think I could really do this in my future. Well, I hope to be able to do this in my future, combine this love I have for human interest stories and talking to people and learning from their experiences, and combining it with this cross-cultural focus, whether that's living abroad or at least traveling abroad. I just can't stress the importance of identifying with other people around the world, Christian or not. They're in their own culture that we can learn from, and that's something that I just would love to do for a living. The other thing that I've discovered throughout this last semester actually is the advertising class that I have. I really like the creative component of copywriting and advertising, so that's another thing that I think I would be interested in. But either way, I just want to be doing some type of creative writing, hopefully with people. And yeah, I'm going to open it up for questions now. Thank you.